Okay, yeah, quick overview of my life. So I am 32 years old. I studied at an all-girls grammar school in Surrey till I was 18. In my A-levels, I did biology, physics and maths, and I got two A's and a C. At the time, I was a very junior member of the Great Britain cycling team. And upon finishing my A-levels, pretty much the next day, I relocated to Manchester to join the British cycling squad full time. At the time, the idea of going to university wasn't really on my radar. I did apply to do a degree in sports science, but I applied with a deferred year, like a gap year. And I sort of had in my head that I'd spend a year out of education, focusing on cycling, seeing how that went, and then sort of make a decision further along the line. At the time in cycling, it was very sort of not the done thing to do education alongside sport. So I did my sort of year out, focused on cycling, became world champion aged 19. So that was pretty good. That gap year went quite well. So didn't go to uni, carried on being a member of the GB cycling team for 10 years in total, went to two Olympic Games as well. So yeah, that all sort of went quite well. A lot of boxes ticked there, as it were. Then I finally decided to retire from cycling after the Rio Olympics, so sort of early 2017. I then applied to study physiology at Manchester Met, which I actually changed to human biology after year one, but the first year was the same anyway. During my time there, I decided that I wanted to actually do medicine. And I realised that I could apply down the sort of grad entry route. Not having perfect A-level results sort of wrote me off all of the 5-year courses anyway. But by being able to apply as a graduate, I could look at some of the 4-year courses. So I spent sort of, I guess, 2 years really looking into that a lot. And throughout the second 2 years of my degree at Manchester Met, went through the whole application process. Got into 3 unis to do grad med, Warwick, Nottingham and St George's. I picked St George's and here I am now, just finished my first term of graduate entry medicine at St George's. And to be honest, quite exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, your experience as a whole is very unique and astounding in that respect. I mean, there's not many. So from doing my research, I'm not a massive. I'll admit I'm not a massive cycling
That's
fan or
okay. I won't
fanatic.
test you on
Well,
it. Don't
I
worry.
know, but doing my research, it's astounding to realize you can come across these people that you hold. Well, currently it's 2 world records,
Yeah,
but
that's right. Well done. Well done.
yeah. So I've done my research.
Yeah, you have. You
So
have.
I guess the first question would be just why medicine? Like again, you came from being one of the top Olympic cyclists to becoming a med student. So I get why medicine.
Yeah, big question. Do ask myself that sometimes, even now, to be honest. But I think originally, when I first retired, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I guess it's a bit cliche to say I'd always liked the idea of medicine, obviously not since I was born, but it'd been a sort of area of interest for me. I'd obviously done science A-levels and always liked biology and science and that sort of thing. When I first retired, I think I realised that I really wanted to work with people. And by doing the degree at Manchester Met, obviously you do a lot of lab work and that sort of thing. And I really thought, like, microscopes, you know what, they're not for me. I still can't work them. Finished the degree, they're a little bit beyond me. I really prefer to work with people. I originally looked at various different options I could do, mainly linked to sport. So as part of the GB cycling team, we work with a coach who is sort of the number one point of contact. Then we'll work with sports scientists as well. But we also work with a nutritionist. And we had one that was actually a trained dietitian. So her background was to be a dietitian, like sort of healthcare wise. They'd done a master's in sports nutrition. Who else do we work with? Physiotherapists, obviously sports medicine, a doctor. All these sort of different areas of people come into part of that team. So I think originally I saw myself doing a role like that, and I sort of originally investigated various careers. So I looked into physiotherapy, which you can do as a grad with a 2-year course. And I looked into dietetics, and I got to the point where I was really interested in dietetics, and I thought I could do this degree at Manchester Met. I could then apply to do dietetics, which was a 2-year master's. And I liked the idea that I could work NHS or I could perhaps work in sport. You know, there's the option either way. And then I realised that I'd always been put off medicine by like how long it would take. And I thought, if I'm talking now about doing a 3-year degree and 2 years post-grad, that's 5 years. Like that's a long time. Like if I'm okay with that, why aren't I okay with doing like grad med, which okay is 2 years more, but actually it's not the worst thing. And I guess for me, the idea of medicine really just combined the whole idea of working with people and interest in people and also applying science. And definitely the people side of it is what I prefer the most, by a long way. I envision myself doing something like either GP or psychiatry, something that's more people-faced than something like surgery. Obviously, I'm very, very early stages, so plenty of time to change my mind on that one. But yeah, it was really the people side of it that attracted it to me. Me to it. Did a bit of work experience and just sort of really liked the hospital environment, really liked, I sort of had a buzz about it, which I liked. And the more I researched it, I realized that the biggest thing that was putting me off was the fear of not getting in, basically. Like the fear of like, there's however many applications per place. So I sort of thought once I try and ignore that as an issue and try and focus on do I actually want to do it and then try and go through that process, that sort of helped me change my mind. I think actually I'm going to give this a go.
Perfect. It does really sound like your idea of medicine stemmed from your time as an athlete. It did obviously progress from there.
Yeah.
So I guess starting from the beginning of your application, like what volunteering or work experience did you undertake?
Yeah, so I found work experience surprisingly hard to get. I was surprised about that. So first of all, I applied to my local hospital and they had like a sort of nice form on their website basically saying pop in your details here and apply if you want to come and do a couple of days of work experience. So I filled in all the form and everything. And basically the reply that I got back was that work experience was only open to 16 and 17-year-olds, so year 11s and year 12s, at the local secondary schools. And I thought, well, damn, I'm 28. Definitely not at a local secondary school. Really don't tick those boxes. So first of all, that was a bit of a no-go area. I did continue sort of emailing and eventually got in the door there, but I'll sort of come back to that. But so first of all, I was hit with a no there. I applied to a local hospice to be a befriender. So that was sort of a really, really nice thing I did. I did that for about a year and then I actually moved house, so I couldn't carry on doing it. But that was really nice to visit someone and just sort of spend time talking to someone. Obviously I can't give away their details, but that was a nice way to get involved in something sort of caring related, although it wasn't obviously directly like a healthcare setting in the way that you might imagine with like, a bustling A&E or anything. But it was nice to have that sort of personal side to it. I also managed to get some shadowing at a GP practice, which was really good. And that's where just really, like, I was really wowed by GP. I couldn't believe the variety that was coming from the door, and like I absolutely loved that there. And I was able to not just sit in with the GPs, but also sit in with some of the practice nurses and the midwife, met the practice pharmacists. So I just sort of did various different bits while I was at that practice. But again, that took a lot of sort of emailing and asking and yeses and nos, or nos then yeses. And finally I got a yes for the local hospital as well. I had to go along to this day that they held called Do You Want to Be a Doctor? And it was all year 11s and year 12s from the local school, plus me, just sort of casually 8 or 9 years older than them. And it was a really nice day. And then once you'd done that day, we had various talks from various consultants and things, you could then apply to do 2 days work experience. So eventually, like, there was quite a lot of hoops to jump through just to get work experience. So I think what I'm saying is, like, don't give up, like, keep sending emails, keep asking the questions. But yeah, it was really challenging. And since I've applied, I've done some HCA work, but when I actually put my application in, I hadn't done any actual sort of paid work. It had all just been work experience or shadowing, or, like I say, the hospice volunteering as well.
Perfect. I feel that's the common factor of everybody struggling to get that key work experience.
Yeah.
Especially with universities wanting you to have some work experience at this point.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a graduate now, so I do understand. So I guess within your application, you must have sat the GAMSAT and the UCAT because you apply for Warwick. So how did you find the GAMSAT and the UCAT as a whole?
Yeah, so I took those in between year 2 and year 3 of my undergrad. And my plan was to focus on my year 2 exams, which was sort of like in the May time, and not even look at any of it before then. I then booked my UCAT for pretty much the first possible date. So it was like early July, the summer that I booked it. And then the GAMSAT is a fixed date. So that was, I think it was 11th of September, actually. This was all 2019. So my plan was to sort of really compartmentalise. So uni first, get my year 2 exams done, because I really wanted to have a predicted 2-1 or higher, because you haven't got that, that's going to hold you up. And then do the UCAT, then do the GAMSAT. I think prep for UCAT went quite well. I spent maybe 3 to 4 weeks focusing on it, using some of the online resources and using a couple of books that I bought. Overall, it wasn't too expensive to prepare for. And the main challenge was that was the time. And obviously you can only take it once per application cycle. And I really felt like I wanted another go. And I think the thing that put me off the most was actually in the test centre on the day. There was loads of people doing their driving theory tests, and it was just like constant coming and going. Oh. And they gave me some earplugs at the start, and I was like, I'm not going to need earplugs. And literally after the first section, I was like, get these in my ears, because it was really like trying to focus, but a lot going on. And the computer that I was using just wasn't quite just a little bit clunky. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but you know when you're used to practicing on your own stuff, and then it was just a little bit different. So UCAT prep. It otherwise went well. In terms of specific tips, like using the on-screen calculator was a really good thing to practice, because I don't know about anybody else, I'm far quicker just using my phone as a calculator or an actual calculator. So just getting used to the actual structure of the test online was helpful. But yeah, the main issue with UCAT is time. And I think someone said to me, if you had all the time in the world to sit and answer the UCAT question very, very well. But the whole point is that you don't. It's often seconds when you've got to quickly make a decision, and if you don't know, just guess and move on. So so I got 2,810 in that, which I knew would be good enough for a Warwick interview. I had looked at Newcastle, and I loved Newcastle, but I knew it wouldn't be good enough for an interview there, because they seem to be 2,900, 3,000 plus for their UCAT cutoff. So my initial reaction when I got my score was like, oh, okay, it's good enough for 1, but perhaps not good enough for 2. But it is what it is. At least you know immediately, and that's the score, and you can think, right, what am I going to do with that? I then had like a week off of revising for aptitude tests, and I then focused on GAMSAT. So this was, sort of mid-July, so just under 2 months to go till the GAMSAT, and I spent basically just under 2 months working on that. I was also working as well, so it wasn't like I was just focusing on GAMSAT. But I think my initial reaction was I wish I'd committed more time to this, because it's a huge exam. It's horrible. Like, it's 6 hours of your day. It includes poetry and essay writing and physics and chemistry and all these things that I just do not like. It was like, how can we encompass all these awful aspects into one exam? But I think the big breakthrough for me with GAMSAT, especially on the science paper, because I thought, well, hopefully I'll be okay with the science paper, like doing a science degree. But honestly, it was so hard. But I think the breakthrough was realising that it's an aptitude test, not a knowledge test. And actually, a lot of the time, the answer is there on the page in front of you. And it's about extracting it and less about knowing it. So that was a bit of a breakthrough for me. And just telling myself, when I saw a question, like especially a chemistry question, because I don't understand chemistry, rather than thinking, oh, God, no, it's chemistry, I don't know what I'm doing, just don't freak out about it. Tell myself the answer is there, work through it logically, try and cross out, the definite wrong answers. So I think just sort of having that change in attitude to the exam was quite key. To that in September, and it means that when you apply, so the October deadline, I didn't have my GAMSAT results, which was really like quite a risk, because it was like, I know my UCAT isn't good enough for Newcastle, so it would be risky to put that. But equally, I've got no idea what I've got on GAMSAT, so I need to just sort of decide which way am I going to risk it. So I risked it with GAMSAT, and I put down 3 GAMSAT unis and 1 UCAT uni. And thankfully, the result was good, so it was okay. But yeah, that's a sort of challenge of the application cycle, to have that unknown when you apply.
Yeah, I guess that's the tricky thing with the GAMSAT, of it being such a long exam to start with, and then you don't know your results.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that agonising wait. That felt like the longest wait ever for that result.
But again, I guess it paid off, because you got 3 offers, and you including Warwick, so it must have paid off in that respect.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your application to medicine, what overall, what did you think you did well? Is there anything you thought you could have improved on?
Overall, so the UCAT I probably could have done better if I think the biggest piece of advice that I didn't get at the time I would give to someone is the UCAT is a cheaper exam to take than GAMSAT. So if you can afford it, try taking it the year before. So like too early, like a year too early, but try having a practice run, because I was a bit put off by the actual situation, which I couldn't have known unless I'd taken it. And I know of some people that deliberately took it a year or 2 years early, knowing that they weren't applying them, but just for the practice run. So I think if you can afford to do that, then do that. I mean, don't take GAMSAT more than you have to, because it's £260 and it's not much fun anyway. But I wish if I'd done GAMSAT earlier, it would have been, if I'd done the March sitting, knowing the result would have changed things. And I deliberately didn't do that because I was like, I'm going to focus on my degree, which was year 2 at the time. But I think in hindsight, I possibly could have managed to do both, and that actually would have made the whole process a lot less stressful to have had that GAMSAT result come to the October deadline. For Warwick, you had to do like have references printed out for each area of work experience that you've done, and they have like a pro forma on their website for like how they want a reference letter written. And I guess my advice would be that for that, anyone applying there, like do that as soon as you do the work experience. Like trying to get those letters 6 months or a year later, even though they still count in Warwick's eyes, often the person you're emailing isn't the person that you actually need to get hold of because someone's left and moved on or maternity leave or whatever. So get those done ASAP would be my advice there. But otherwise, like I think the area that I spent the least time on in the application was the personal statement, because I knew that most unis didn't really consider it, or it was like their last thing they looked at. Like most unis for interview, they just look at the UCAT or GAMSAT when deciding the interview. Then in the case of Warwick, the work experience as well. But I put in effort to it, but not a lot of effort really. I didn't stress about it. Like I see a lot of people on social media stressing about personal statements, and I realise it's different for the undergrad course, but definitely for the grad course, it's not something that most unis spend a lot of time considering. So I didn't really stress myself much about that.
Yes.
But otherwise, it went okay. So, yeah.
So I guess we've touched on it slightly already, but how do you feel your past experience? Obviously, you have a unique set of experiences. How do you feel like they've helped you within your application?
Yeah, good question. So I think having been part of the GB team for as long as I was, there's a lot of dealing with big events, big competitions, a lot of pressure. Obviously, the most pressure always comes from yourself, but often it feels like there's a lot of external pressure as well. So I think I'm quite good at, in general, I don't get too nervous or stressed for exams. I think current course mates might disagree with that, given the exam we've just had, and we're all a little bit stressed about that. But I'd say in life in general, I'm quite good at I almost treat like exam day as like race day, which sounds really silly, but I think like, right, I'm going to have a cup of coffee then from a caffeine, and I'm going to make sure I eat a proper meal then, and I'm going to try and, get good sleep the night before and all this sort of thing. So I think I sort of approach exams in that same way as I approach competitions. And also when it comes to the interviews, the MMIs, I have to be honest, I spent a lot of time being interviewed in my career by journalists, had a lot of tricky questions. So like that didn't faze me at all. And I realised that's quite a unique experience that I've had from my background, that I have spent a lot of time being interviewed by people. And so that in itself didn't make me nervous. Obviously, the sort of questions you get asked in an interview after a race are very different to the questions you get asked at a medical school interview. But the concept of being interviewed wasn't alien to me. So I think that had a big bearing on that. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that didn't faze me. Like I always felt like if I could get to interview stage, I'd be okay. Like my biggest hurdle was to try and get to the interview. Having got there, obviously I was then riddled with self-doubt, thinking, actually, have I said the right things? Have I not? Because it's not simple at all. But I did feel more confident in that area. And I've also spent a lot of time working with people in high pressure situations, so I feel quite used to how different people respond to that, and recognizing sort of stress and nerves and people that are not dealing with pressure well. So again, I think that probably helped a little bit of maybe there.
Yeah, totally. I guess you're almost immune to that competitiveness and those nerves and pressure from your past experiences. So when that came to the actual application process, you had a better grasp of what you needed to do than normal students.
Yeah, and I think I'm quite good when it comes to being competitive. Like, I don't identify as being competitive. Like, I don't think I'm competitive. I realise that history might say maybe I am, but I think I'm quite good at focusing on myself and doing what I need to do to be like the best I can be, rather than looking around me and thinking, oh, what scores she got on her GAMSAT, or I wonder what she said in her interview. Like, at definitely interview stage, I was focused on myself and not looking around, getting myself stressed about other people. So again, I think that's quite a nice, that was quite a good attribute at the time, to be able to have the blinkers on and focus on what was important.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So I guess within your interviews, your MMI style interviews, everybody finds the trickiest the role play. So how did you get any role play, or how did you find that sort of style of interview?
Yeah, so obviously I can't give away any details, but I did have role play scenarios at universities that will be unnamed, and I was very nervous about that beforehand. And I mean, that's the one thing that I hadn't practiced. Like, obviously, like I said, I've been interviewed a lot before, but I've not done a lot of drama or acting or any of that sort of thing. I actually found they went the best, and I did like no preparation for them. I sort of thought, oh God, I really hope there's no role plays. Like, oh God, how awful will that be? How awkward. But it actually wasn't awkward. I found that because the universities get actors in, and it felt quite real. It felt like you were talking to a real person rather than doing an awkward role play situation. So this, my advice would be just really immerse yourself in the moment and forget. Don't think about trying to act, or you're being watched. Just immerse yourself. Think of it as a real life situation. So yeah, that sort of went okay in that sense.
Yeah, so obviously you have had a lot of exposure to interviews. However, did you do any like self-reflection, like made any notes on just what points you would answer in each question throughout your interview?
Yeah. So for interview prep, spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos. So there's Ollie Burton, who's at Warwick. He does some amazing videos. So that was my main resource for that. So yeah, really don't be spending a lot of money, because seriously, there is such good free stuff online. But yeah, no, I did sort of reflect on my work experience, make notes about things that had gone well and badly, and it's a funny thing, because I think everything in your head, like you've lived those experiences, but I think as a bit of prep to put things down on paper, it just sort of helps you organize your thoughts and recall things beforehand. So yeah, I did do a bit of that. But I was also quite keen not to try and over prepare and over rehearse answers, and just try and sort of be me. And obviously I can't give away what I was asked, but there were a few things that I was like, where did that come from? And like, really, like, I couldn't have been prepared for it. So I think like general reflection is good, but don't try to practice and rehearse too much, because I think it would sound rehearsed. And then if a question is not quite what you wanted and you answer a sort of slightly different one, I think that's not going to go well either.
Perfect. Yeah. Just going back to Ollie, Ollie has created a masterpiece of interview questions and UCAT answers. So he is, I agree with you, he's a outstanding source to use.
He is the go-to, definitely.
Yeah. So obviously you've been in med school for your first term now.
Yeah.
So have you found any like particular myths or misconceptions that have been like stigmatized, or that you thought are stigmatized within med schools?
Ooh, good question. It has been a really funny experience, because we've been mainly online. We've only been going in half a day a week. So there's still some people on the course I've not met. I think I've met most people, but there's probably still some that I've not met. So I think I felt that there'd be a lot more like you're all in it together and you're all part of this group trying to get through. But it's been difficult to sort of, I guess, build those bonds with people, because it has been a lot more remote. Otherwise, I'm just blown away by how much volume of work there is, which everyone warned me beforehand. Everyone said it's insanely hard. And you think, yeah, okay, it's going to be hard, but like, how hard can it be? Like, people do it, people get through. But honestly, blown away by how hard it is. When I say hard, I mean more the volume of work as opposed to the difficulty. Like, it's difficult because there is a lot of volume. And that's something that definitely I was warned about before a lot. And I guess you can't really understand how different it is from a normal undergrad degree until you're actually doing it. And obviously every university is different in terms of their curriculum. So at St George's, the way it works essentially is you're doing 2 years into one. And then for my second year, I would join the undergrads for their third year, and then we all do the final 3 years together. So it really is, you are just cramming 2 years into one. I know other courses structure things slightly differently, and you can argue all day about what's the best and what's the worst way of doing things. Either way, you get to the end goal the same. And I think there's probably there's a lot of reasons when it comes to selecting a university, more so than exactly how they arrange their curriculum. But no, it's been a lot tougher than I thought it would be. Not that no one didn't warn me of that, but I think I just couldn't have imagined how hard it would be. And we finished term now, and honestly, I'm completely exhausted. But it's good because we've got pretty much 4 weeks off for Christmas, so there's a lot of time to rest and then consolidate and sort of be good to go in January.
Yeah. So I guess something that I could personally resonate with is, how did you find the transition from a BSc from MMU to a med degree?
Yeah, it's in some ways completely different. In some ways, there's similarities. So lectures are only really one element of our learning. We have PBL, which is problem-based learning. So that is sort of small groups working together, and that really holds you to account. We have that twice a week to make sure that you're doing the work, because you're sort of sharing it with your peers and you're sort of explaining to each other the different learning objectives. So that was very different. I think for an undergrad, it's easier to get behind and then catch up, and you're not having that check twice a week that you're on track. Like, you could easily miss a week's worth of lectures, then catch up on them the following week, and no one would know and no one would mind, and it would be fine. And as long as you get the work in on time at the end, who cares? Whatever works for you, really. But this, you're really held to account, well, twice a week with PBL to make sure that you really are on track. What else is different? I think at MMU there's a big focus on reading around topics and doing your own reading, and that was always what they were saying. So here is your lecture, but actually we want you to go away and spend another 2 hours doing your own reading, which of course everyone does. But this is more like they are giving you a lot more of the content, and there's not that need to go off and read research papers, really. Like, you can if you want to, but it's not as in-depth at all. It's been sort of using various resources online to learn things, like using YouTube videos and all that sort of thing. It's a lot less. I mean, I don't think I've read any research papers since I've started. I don't think I have. We do have some coursework. We do need to obviously read papers, but in a general week, like, it's not really part of your learning to go off and read research papers. It's more part of your learning to understand the science, or to practice your communication skills, or practice your clinical skills, or that sort of thing. So that is very different to an undergrad, which was really heavily focused on go off and do extra reading all the time.
Yeah. So I guess people before you have described it as it's more broad rather than depth, compared to a normal degree. So is that similar, obviously, to the St. George's course?
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. There's times when it feels quite in depth, especially when it's something that I've not done before. Like, I've done a degree in human biology, and it was 13 years since my A-levels, so a very long time since I did actual biology A-level, and GCSEs even longer before that. So stuff that I covered mainly in the last year, actually, at MMU, I sort of feel okay or better with. And often I think, they're not going quite as much in depth, so that's okay. There's other things that I've not covered at all before, which obviously feel in depth because they're brand new. So it does depend what you've done before. And the course at St. George's, as with a lot of, I think all the ones that I apply to, is open to people from any degree, which is something that really appealed to me. Despite the fact that I've done a science degree, I really wanted a course that sort of didn't presume much prior knowledge, if you know what I mean, and was going to teach everything that I needed. And I also really wanted to be around other people that had done different degrees, rather than a lot of people that had done something very, very similar. So I quite like the sort of the variety of the cohort in that sense. But yeah, back to what you were saying, it's more the volume as opposed to the depth that's the difficulty. But yeah, like I say, some bits feel in depth just because they're new.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, with you holding a degree in biology, how did you find that? Did that give you an advantage when you entered med school, or did you feel, because people I spoke to previously, they say, the first few terms it feels like you have an advantage, but then everybody just plays catch up at that point. Is that similar to your experience?
I think in some ways, but like honestly, all the topics that I did in final year at MMU like have not come up yet. Like I did stuff on neuroscience, I did microbiology. We have a bit of stuff on hypertension has come up, but in general, like there's stuff that I did in year one at MMU that has been coming up. That I'm thinking, oh, that feels ages ago now. So I think overall, I am glad that I've done a science degree. I think if you were going to pick what's the best possible course to do beforehand, there's sort of swings and roundabouts with all of it. Like I did no anatomy as part of my degree, and so anatomy is all sort of brand new, and that feels horribly in depth and a huge amount of volume, and all feels brand new. So I think in some ways, yes, you can feel more comfortable with things. And also it's just sort of being used to studying and used to studying science, use some of the terminology. I think that can be a nice advantage. I was thinking when I applied, like, I could have done any degree because obviously they're open to any background. And I was thinking, it would have been really cool to have done something like completely left field and come in with like a completely obscure degree. But now I'm thinking, I'm actually glad that some of it crosses over because I think, you feel like you need all the help you can get sometimes. So that is quite nice when bits do cross over.
Yeah, totally. So I guess just to move on, just what keeps you motivated in such an intense course like medicine?
Good question. I think in general, I'm going to say that I think motivation is a bit of a myth. And I think the question is, are you committed to something? Yes or no? And if you are committed to it, like, are you enjoying it? And if you are enjoying it, you probably feel what we'd call motivated. And if you're not enjoying it, you probably don't feel what most people call motivated. So it's a bit of a strange concept, motivation, to me, which is something I've probably thought about a lot in my sporting career. I think staying committed to the course is easy just because you have your 2 PBL sessions a week, which are, well, would be in person, but currently they're live on MS Teams, along with most other things, where you're sort of held to account. So you can't, like, you've got to do the work because otherwise, you're sort of letting the side down, as it were, with your PBL group. And also you're in once a week for clinical skills, again, seeing people and actually sort of chatting to people and making sure you're on track. I think it's fair to say I've not enjoyed this whole term. There's been some really, really difficult weeks, and there's been some weeks that I've really enjoyed. And I think it's difficult in a hard. So each week is sort of a different topic. So you start the week on a Monday morning with a new case for the week, and then the whole of the teaching that week involves that either body system or organ or whatever the issue is with the patient, the sort of hypothetical patient. And there's been some weeks when it has been really tough. And I think what's really helped me is just recognizing that I'm not the only person finding it tough. And that has been more difficult learning remotely. But when I have spoken to other people on the course and they say, "Oh, this is a really heavy week this week," and you think, thank God it's not just me. Because I think it's easy to think that it is just you. So I think when I've been struggling, just chatting to people, and there'll always be someone that is particularly enjoying that week and knows it all anyway. But in the most part, you won't be the only one. So I think it's really helped just chatting to people, just sending a message, just saying, "Christ, I haven't got a clue what's going on this week." And they say, "Yeah, same." And you think, you know what, it's okay. I'm not going to be a complete failure. And otherwise, yeah, trying to enjoy it. So trying to sort of mix up my learning methods, trying to get involved with like revision groups that have been online along with everything else. But I think it's difficult because I think a lot of the fun has been sucked out of the course with lockdown restrictions and being online, and a lot of the people side of it has been limited. So I think that has been more of a challenge to keep that enjoyment there. But as much as possible, just trying to interact with other people, basically. And you are all in it together, and you can all get through it, but you probably will need help from your course mates to do it.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I feel, especially you just going into your first year, you have no grasp or concept on what the course is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't have that connection between your peers, you can feel sort of like isolated.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
I think every student has experienced some of that this year with obviously everything being online. So I do totally agree with that.
Yeah, so, I do think had this happened last year and I'd been in my final year at MMU, as annoying as it would have been, I would have already had a group of friends and I would already sort of known the score with how teaching's delivered. And yes, it's not great for anybody, but I think it's been weird starting a brand new course in a new area with new people and new style of learning. But it's been tough for everybody in different ways. But yeah, like you say, it's a weird way to start a course like this.
Yeah, so I guess on the flip side to that with such a long and strenuous course, how do you find time to plan for like self-rest and care?
Good question. Yeah, I probably wasn't very good at that at the very start of the course, and I think it's easy for the first, couple of weeks to work all weekend and work every evening, and I think very quickly I realised that that wasn't going to be okay. I joined the running club at the uni, which has been nice because they've been able to keep going, not in this latest lockdown, but with the sort of tier 2 restrictions before that, they've been able to keep going most of the time. And just trying to force myself to have a day off each week, which initially I wasn't doing. Initially, I was working Saturday and Sunday. I mean, not all day, but I was doing stuff on Saturday and Sunday for uni. But getting to the point where I'm telling myself, right, this Saturday or this Sunday, I'm going to not look at a single uni thing all day. And that's really made a difference, just really forcing myself not to do that. And also I do some paid work, like other work, and that's been really helpful just to be in a completely different environment. And, it's still working, but it's so different that it just feels refreshing to use your brain in other ways. So that's quite nice. But yeah, I think that's another thing that has been challenging with COVID restrictions, basically, to be able to have that balance, because a lot of the fun things that we might do have obviously been taken away. So it's almost been more of a conscious effort to say, right, I'm not going to open my laptop today. It's going to stay shut for 24 hours. And I can work tomorrow, but I need to take that day off. But yeah, a lot of people told me that at the start. And I was like, yeah, it'd be fine. And I feel like sort of 3 or 4 weeks in, you think, yeah, I probably can't maintain this. So yeah, force yourself to take a day off.
Yeah, I think a few people have said the exact same thing that you just said, is don't let medicine run your life around medicine. Obviously,
I like that.
It's easy to let your degree take control of you. So I totally agree with that. So I guess obviously all you know is post-COVID, during COVID, but what does a week look like at St. George's, in terms of the classes?
Yeah, so probably one of the biggest things that surprised me is that not every week is the same. So at MMU, every week was pretty much the same. Like we had practicals some weeks, but in general, you'd have, your lectures for each module would be the same time, same length each week. But here we have, so every Monday and Thursday morning, we have a 3-hour PBL session. That would normally be in person, but is currently online. And so you start the week with a case. So you sort of follow that again online with your group, and it's like a patient presents to A&E with symptoms of whatever, and you all sort of try and work out what it could be, and you eventually sort of work through the problem, and then you leave that Monday morning session with probably a list of learning objectives and things you want to learn before Thursday. Sometimes we have lectures Monday afternoon, sometimes we don't. There's not normally a lot going on Monday afternoon, so often that's like free time to get some work done, which is useful. Tuesday is normally a completely full day, so lectures all morning, and then in the afternoon, clinical skills and or communication skills. So either way into uni and either doing some sort of more hands-on clinical skills or more sort of role play style, communication style things, which are nice. So that's in small groups and all PPE'd up and everything, because that's our one sort of in uni opportunity. Normally on a Wednesday we have lectures in the mornings. These are obviously all online at the moment. Some are pre-recorded, some are live, so that varies a little bit. And then a Wednesday afternoon would normally always be off, but some weeks we have a GP placement. So I use the term placement very loosely because, again, it is a Microsoft Teams call. So some weeks I have that on a Wednesday afternoon, but on those weeks I don't have lectures in the morning. So either way, you're going to get half a day off on a Wednesday, whatever. Thursday morning PBL, so you sort of continue the case that you started on Monday morning, another 3 hours of sort of working through the case and presenting what you've found from last week, which often a lot of it's been covered in your lectures that you've had, but also a lot of that is self-directed learning as well. So you sort of go through all that Thursday morning and continue the case. Thursday afternoon is usually off. So again, that's a nice surprise to have another afternoon off in the week to sort of get some work done or do something completely different, which is quite nice. And then Fridays have normally been a full day of lectures. I think in non-COVID times, we would be in for anatomy, but we've not been in for anatomy. So we've had sort of online sessions for that. But yeah, pretty much a day of lectures on a Friday. So most weeks, it's only Tuesdays and Fridays that are sort of 9 to 5, your time is taken up, because we often have the afternoons off at least twice a week, which is nice because it allows you that flexibility to get your work done when you want to. And like for me, I would prefer to use that time in the afternoon to either go out for a bike ride or go out for a run, or sort of do some exercise, especially in the winter in the daylight, and then sort of work later in the evening. So that works for me to have that degree of flexibility there in the timetable. So that's quite nice.
No, yeah, it does sound like it's split into two subcategories of you get given like a problem,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
also have your lectures that you need to learn as well. So
yeah.
do you find it a bit overwhelming at times, you having to balance your problem-based learning and your lectures, or does it all like cohesively come together? Is it round the same subject?
Yeah, it's all around the subject, so most of it comes together. Sometimes the lectures don't directly answer the learning objectives that you've sort of got as part of your self-directed learning from PBL. So you do have to go off and use other resources. I think for me as well, I think lectures can be quite a passive way of learning, and it's not always the best to just sit there, especially online. Like it really is sort of death by teams sometimes when you're just sort of watching stuff on your own, no one else there. So I think it's quite useful for me to sometimes use the lectures, but actually go off and try and use my own resources or whatever else I want to use in addition to that or alongside that. But it does all link together, but it's sort of also quite key to manage your time. And I think I don't want to spend hours watching a lecture and making really, really detailed notes when actually perhaps an overview of that might help, but I need to look into something else more in depth that I don't really understand. So it's sort of making a judgment call as well throughout the week of what's more important, where to sort of focus your energy. And that's also been the strange thing that I didn't really cover in the timetable. Each week is a different number of lectures. So sometimes we could have 3 or 4 lectures on a Tuesday morning, like completely full, 9 till 1, and then go straight into uni in the afternoon. Other weeks we could have 1 or 2 lectures, and the same on a Friday. We could have all day of lectures on a Friday. We could have maybe 2 lectures on a Friday. So it varies quite a lot. So planning your time isn't quite as easy because you're not quite sure how many hours of lectures there are going to be each week. But I think either way, I try and do my self-directed stuff anyway and focus on that and use the lectures to make sure I've gone into the right level of depth, basically.
Yeah, so I guess coming from a degree at MMU, we can probably relate that it does get very competitive. Everybody wants to be hitting those 70 and above grades, and unfortunately they can only give so many first classes out.
Yeah.
So how do you find the transition to med school? Do you feel like the competitiveness is the same, or do you feel like it's slightly different in the degree?
Good question. I think there's definitely a degree of competitiveness because when you apply to be a junior doctor, so if you're F1 and F2 jobs, an element of how that is allocated is based on your decile ranking at medical school. Yeah. So people want to be in the top decile to get the most points to get the best job that they want. The UK Foundation Programme has actually announced some changes to their methods, literally like yesterday. Yeah. It's not going to include degrees, damn it. So yeah, that's annoying for all of us grads. Personally, I've not spent a lot of time worrying about that because I think from what I know, there's like competitive areas of the country. Like if you want to stay in London, that's pretty competitive to stay there. If you want to go elsewhere, it's not quite as competitive. I'm probably not envisaging staying here, so I've not really been caught up in that. And overall, I wouldn't say it's got too competitive. Like from what I've experienced, I haven't really found people. I found people to be helpful. I found people to be sort of giving each other advice and revision tips and study tips and whatever, as opposed to trying to, keep themselves to themselves. Yeah. So I don't think it really has been competitive so far, unless I'm just blind to it, which is also possible. Because like I say, we are so remote and it is all a little bit weird. And like I say, I'm not focusing on the competitiveness myself. So maybe it is. People always tell me beforehand that medical school is really, really competitive, like amongst each other. So far, I've not experienced that, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like the nerves and pressure as well of everybody studying an undergraduate that wants to go into graduate entry. They've not yet made it, so they still have those nerves and pressure to score those high grades. I guess once you're there, the nerves and pressure decrease a bit. Obviously, you still need to pass, but you've made it at that point. So
yes, you've got over a big hurdle. I think probably something that I realise now as well. Whilst doing my undergrad, obviously, I was really focused on getting a first, and obviously everyone wants a first. But when it comes to applying to grad med, you could have a low 2-1, or you could be top of your year, and it doesn't matter because they're looking for a 2-1 plus. obviously at the time it doesn't feel like that because you obviously want to get the best mark you can in your degree. But I mean, I don't go around asking people, like I go around asking people what degree they did. I don't say like, oh, did you get a 2-1 or a first? Like it just isn't really something that comes up. So it obviously depends on your situation. And I think going from final year of an undergrad, obviously your main focus is what final result am I going to get? Whereas starting graduating medicine, my main focus is I want to pass the year. I don't care where I come as long as I pass. And I think it is that hard. It is hard. And the 2 exams that we've had so far, haven't got the result back for one of them. I passed the first one, and I'm like, yes, I passed. I'm really not bothered about where I came because honestly, just your job for year 1 is to pass the year. And I think if there's going to be any competitiveness, I'll worry about that in the next 3 years. But no, not this year.
Yeah, so I guess just to move on, what's your vision going into the future then? Where do you see yourself? Obviously, I still understand it's early days, but...
Yeah, I've always envisioned myself probably going into GP. Like that is what I've really enjoyed, that I've experienced so far. Our GP placements that we've had so far have been absolutely awesome. Like obviously very, very limited being online, but the GP that we've been working with, she's been absolutely awesome. So still very inspired by GP. Really, really intrigued by psychiatry. Know very, very little about the actual working life of a psychiatrist, but I've joined the Psychiatry Society here and been to a couple of their talks, virtual talks, and it has been really fascinating. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't envision myself doing any form of surgery, just isn't really what appeals to me. But I'm very much open to seeing what I like and what I don't like. I think in general, I spent my first career being very, very specialised on minute area of cycling. And I envisaged myself with medicine. I like the idea of being more of a generalist, like as a GP. However, knowing my personality, I realised that I might actually prefer to be an expert in one little area than know a little bit about a lot. So whilst GP appeals to me, I do recognise that it might not suit me in other ways. So we shall see. We shall see what happens.
Yeah, I guess from the doctors and the the foundation year doctors I've spoken to, they all decided on, everybody has a vision in mind on what they want, but throughout their course, most of them have actually changed onto what they envision and what they like. So I do understand it's early doors, so it's not an ideal question.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So I guess just finally, for future medical students watching this video, are there any golden pieces of advice you give someone like going through the application process?
In terms of the application process, really just take it step by step. Like when I first looked at it in the very early days, I was like, oh my God, they want a lot here. They want work experience, they want these exams, you've got to do these interviews. Just take it one step at a time. Like start off by going to open days. Again, I know that's a bit different now, but if you can go to open days, go to as many open days as you can. There was some unis that I thought looked really nice online, and I went there and I was like, no, I don't actually like this at all. So you get such a good feel for the university and really listen to how they select for interview. And I'd say apply tactically. And obviously it depends if you know your GAMSAT result or whatever. But there's no good looking at an application sort of requirements for a uni and thinking, well, I hit most of those, but I haven't actually got that right. But it'll be okay. Like it won't be okay. Like they have their rules, and however much you like them or don't like them or think they're unfair, like you have to sort of fit that mold and you have to apply tactically. So that's what I said. Like I really like Newcastle, but I knew my UCAT wasn't high enough, and that's all they based their interview on. So I was like, well, you know, it would be a waste of a spot on my application to put one in there. So yeah, go to the open days, pay attention to what they're looking for when they select for interview, apply tactically. I'd say don't even worry about the interviews beforehand. Like focus on doing well in the entrance exams. That is what's going to get you through the door into that interview. If you mess those up, then you're going to have to do it the next year. Simple as that. So focus on those. Once you've got yourself to interview stage, then worry about that. So yeah, just really take it one stage at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by the whole process. But yeah, like I said, listen to what the universities want, because they are all subtly different, and you can have, you know, you can be not so strong in some of your aptitude tests, but actually that's okay for some unis because they look at other areas, got a more holistic approach. Others are very sort of literally draw a list and draw a line. So make sure you play to your strengths in that sense, and yeah, do your research basically.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up question to that would be just people starting out their first day at St. George's, what would be your take-home tips for those students?
Oh, my take-home tips. So at St. George's first day, right, definitely the biggest challenge for me has been working out how to study effectively. So we do like a foundation module for 3 weeks. So use that time to work out, how do you want to make notes? How do you want to learn? How are you going to revise? What works for you? Because there's no time, once you're in it, you're so busy, you just keep going from 1 week to the next. So working out how you study effectively is key, and studying medicine is studying anything else. So you have to have sort of good, solid methods, and work that out first. And don't do any work in the summer beforehand, because honestly, like, we don't have like a half term or consolidation week here, so we've just been straight through. We started 24th of August, and then we finished on Monday the 7th of December. So it was just straight through, non-stop. So like, I took all of August, like I didn't do any like paid work in August. I've been working as an HCA May, June, July. I stopped at the end of July, and I took 3 weeks off at the start of August, and I was so bored. I was like, should I book an HCA shift? Like, I'm really bored. I've got absolutely nothing to do. I'm just waiting to start uni. I'm so glad that I did that, because it's so hard once you start. Like, really enjoy doing nothing for a little bit if you can. Pandemics permitting, travel, have a holiday, enjoy yourself, whatever you can do. See friends, see family, do whatever, because once it starts, it is really intense. And I was not prepared for how tough it would be. And I know everyone told me that, but I think it sort of takes it a bit actually being in it to realise it. So yeah, enjoy any time beforehand.
Perfect. Yeah, and again, I'd just like to say a massive thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come speak to me.
Oh, thank
I
you for having
understand
me.
you're a very busy person.
Oh, it's
Medical
been a pleasure.
school, and so yeah, it's been a real honour to speak to you this evening.
Oh, thank you very much, and well done for doing what you're doing as well. So there wasn't this sort of thing when I was at MMU. So yeah, well done you for taking the initiative to do that. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. So I guess finally, for our viewers online, where can they find you, or where can they get in contact if they have any other questions?
Yes, on Instagram I have a specific sort of studygram account, which I love. So don't take the mickey out of me for that. So that's at Joanna_studies. I'm also on Twitter at Rowsell MBE. So I don't really do much Facebooking. So Twitter and Instagram are your better methods of contacting me. So I do sort of lurk around on those apps. So yeah, get in contact that way. And I'm really keen to help people, especially from like the non-traditional backgrounds, non-traditional routes into medicine. Because when I first looked into it, I was overwhelmed that all the information online is really geared up for your average 18-year-old leaving school with all your perfect A levels, and it was more difficult to find information on the grad course, and it was more difficult to find out about mature students and all that sort of thing. So I'm happy to help people if I can in any way, basically.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Joanna.